are going to continue the conversation around a study that was conducted by the Human Sciences Research Council, and that report delivered a little earlier. It had to do with the level of satisfaction among South African voters, and I have with me Professor Narnia-Bohler-Muller, who is with the HSRC, and she's going to help us just get into a bit of detail as to what necessitates these kinds of surveys. Prof, perhaps let's start there. Why is it important that you conduct this survey? Because this is done after every election, isn't it?
Yes. So we need to know what people are saying. We need to know about the voices of the voters, right? That's very important. We also need to know how people feel about the voting processes. But most importantly, this research feeds into a larger mechanism to determine whether the elections were free and fair.
Yeah. You interviewed people between the ages 18 and older, and primarily your focus is on the ones who voted, not the ones who are not voting. So let's get from you the 18 years and I should say probably late 30s, the youth. They're quite absent, and it's not the first time that the youth is spoken about as being absent participants when it comes to elections. What are some of the reasons that motivate the ones who go and vote?
I think it's still a sense of party loyalty coming from family. So families do influence young people if they feel that it's important. So and some peer pressure perhaps, but also a sense of civic duty. So there are still young people who feel that they need to contribute towards the democratic processes in South Africa, but unfortunately not enough.
Yeah. Prof, then let's get into some of what came out of your study. And you say overwhelmingly the people felt that this election was free and fair, but also importantly there was an overwhelming positive attitude towards the management of the electoral process, plus those who are inside the polling stations, the presiding officers. With that said though, Prof, there is this continued concern, particularly from parties like the IFP, who are saying, we have raised this over a number of years, the conducting of elections using SATU members, and they're saying it's a direct link to the ANC. And there is an anecdote, for example, that comes from these very elections. One of the presiding officers in Gwamakuta caught, and is actually arrested now, caught allegedly marking ballots in favor of a particular party. And if I could actually just put it out there, they are saying he was marking ballots in favor of the ANC. The continued use of SATU members, is that something that you think the IEC should look into a little more seriously?
I do think so. I mean, you need to have a perception. People need to see that things are free and fair. So that's very important. And every single factor, the smallest thing is important. So these kinds of things need to be paid attention to, and I think the IEC is very well aware of this. They're isolated incidents, but we can't ignore isolated incidents. We have to take them seriously. But by yesterday, only 3 main complaints, only 3 official complaints had been laid against the IEC and its processes.
And I like what you're saying, Prof, that as much as there are isolated incidents, but it's something that the IEC has got to look into, and it perhaps feeds into my last question to you, which has to do with the statement that was made either by yourself or the gentleman that you were presenting with, and it had to do with the statement that says there is a disturbing decline in democracy in South Africa. That talks to what? Disillusionment?
Yes, it's about trust. We seem to be losing trust in South Africa. Trust in democracy, trust in institutions of democracy, trust in one another as people. And it's gotten so bad, in fact, that trust in democracy has declined to under 10% in KwaZulu-Natal. So the IEC, for example, overall trust in the IEC is at 43%. This sounds very low, but at the same time, trust in courts have declined to 35%. Trust in political parties and politicians are at under 20%. So something is wrong. Something is fundamentally wrong. Some kind of message is not coming across. People are not feeling comfortable in the country at the moment in terms of how our democracy is working.
Prof, there is something that you've just said now, and it's got to do with the trust levels in KZN. I'm wondering why you chose that province, because it is a problematic province whenever we go into elections, is it not?
Well, we've done some research and we've looked at provinces, and in terms of trust, it's the lowest in KwaZulu-Natal in every respect. And
when you say in every respect, what are we talking about?
Well, we're talking about trust in national government, trust in provincial and local government, trust in institutions supporting democracy, trust in the courts, social trust, social giving. It's so low in KwaZulu-Natal, and we didn't go out there thinking that this would be an outcome of the research. It was once we were looking at the provinces that we saw this, and so it's a kind of a hot spot, right? And some attention needs to be paid there, and there are many reasons for this, I'm sure.
Professor Narnia-Bohler-Muller, thank you very much for those insights. She is with the Human Sciences Research Council. Tami, those are very worrying words, that the level of trust in our democratic processes, democratic institutions, that is something that is not only the work of the IEC perhaps to try and lift it up, but it's got to do with, I think, politicians themselves. It's probably a question I neglected to ask here as to what about the level of trust in politicians, because these are the people that go out there and make these promises that never get fulfilled in some instances.